You do not belong here." The words cut through the ceremonial hall like a blade through silk, and Rowena Thorne felt every eye in the room turn toward her. She stood at the edge of the sacred circle, her plain gray dress a stark contrast to the jeweled gowns of the other candidates, her hands trembling so violently she had to clasp them together to hide it. Alpha King Cassian Blackthorne had not even looked at her when he spoke. He did not need to. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, the kind that made wolves instinctively lower their heads and bare their throats. But Rowena could not move. Her feet had frozen to the ancient stone floor, as if the castle itself had rooted her in place. "Your Majesty," Elder Morgoth's voice creaked from the shadows near the altar. The girl's name appeared in the lunar registry. The laws are clear. All those called must present themselves. Cassian's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath the sharp line of his beard. He was a man, carved from mountain stone and winter storms, tall and broad with eyes the color of amber whiskey that could freeze or burn depending on his mood. Right now, they burned with barely contained irritation. "The registry has made an error," he said, each word precise and cold. "This woman is a scribe. She catalogs dusty books in the lower archives. She has no training, no lineage, no business standing in the circle of choosing." Rowena wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. She had tried to explain this exact thing to the guards who had dragged her from her small room in the servants' quarters 3 hours ago. But no one had listened. The lunar registry was sacred, they said. If your name appeared in the silver ink that only manifested during the full moon before the choosing ceremony, you were summoned. No exceptions. No excuses. "Nevertheless," Elder Morgoth continued, and there was something in his ancient voice that made even the Alpha King pause. "She is here. The ancestors have called her. Would you deny them their voice?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Rowena could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could smell the sweet incense burning in the braziers around the sacred altar, could feel the weight of at least 200 pack members watching from the galleries above. This was supposed to be a formality. Everyone knew Cassian had already chosen Lady Vivian Ashford, the elegant daughter of the Northern Council's most influential family. Vivian stood on the opposite side of the circle now, her spine straight as a sword, her silver dress shimmering like moonlight on water. She looked like a queen already. She looked like she had been born for this moment. Rowena looked like she had been pulled from bed and thrown into a nightmare. "Very well," Cassian said finally, his tone suggesting this was a waste of his time, but that he would indulge the elders' superstitions for the sake of tradition. "Let us proceed. Quickly." The ceremony of choosing was ancient, older than the current royal bloodline, older perhaps than the castle itself. It required each candidate to approach the altar of ancestors and place their hand upon the sovereign crystal, a massive clear stone that supposedly held the essence of every Alpha King who had ever ruled. If the ancestors approved of the match, the crystal would glow with warm golden light. If they rejected the candidate, it would remain cold and dark. Simple, definitive, impossible to manipulate or deceive. Lady Vivian stepped forward first, her movements graceful and measured. She had trained for this her entire life. Rowena could see it in the way she walked, in the confident tilt of her chin, in the practiced smile she offered the watching crowd. Vivian placed her hand on the crystal, with the ease of someone who had never doubted her place in the world. The hall held its breath. Seconds passed, then more seconds. The crystal remained, clear and cold, its facets catching the torchlight, but producing no glow of its own. Vivian's smile faltered. She pressed her palm more firmly against the stone, her knuckles whitening with the pressure. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. A murmur rippled through the galleries like wind through autumn leaves. Elder Morgoth stepped closer, his rheumy eyes narrowing as he examined the crystal. "Curious," he muttered. "Most curious." Cassian's expression had gone carefully blank, But Rowena saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. This was not supposed to happen. Vivienne was perfect. She was exactly what the kingdom needed, what he needed. A partner who understood politics and diplomacy, who could navigate the treacherous waters of interpack relations, who would strengthen his rule rather than complicate it. Perhaps the crystal needs recalibration, Vivienne suggested, her voice admirably steady despite the pink flush creeping up her neck. These artifacts are ancient. They can malfunction. The crystal does not malfunction, Elder Morgoth said sharply. It has never malfunctioned in 800 years. It simply has not given its blessing. He turned those ancient eyes toward Rowena, and she felt her stomach drop through the floor. The second candidate will approach. Rowena could not breathe. This was wrong. This was all terribly, catastrophically wrong. She was not a candidate. She was not anything. She was the girl who sorted old treaties and recorded pack lineages in neat handwriting, who ate her meals alone in her room because she was too anxious to face the crowded dining halls, who had not shifted into her wolf form in over 3 years because she was too afraid of losing control. She did not belong anywhere near that altar, or that crystal, or that terrifyingly beautiful Alpha King, who was now looking at her with an expression somewhere between confusion and contempt. "I cannot," she whispered, but her voice was so quiet that only the people nearest her heard it. "You must," Elder Morgoth said, and there was something almost gentle in his tone now, something that reminded her of her grandmother, who had died when Rowena was 12. "Come, child. Place your hand upon the stone." Her legs moved without her permission. One step, then another. The distance between the edge of the circle and the altar could not have been more than 20 feet, but it felt like miles. She was acutely aware of her worn shoes scuffing against the polished floor, of the way her dress hung shapeless and plain on her too thin frame, of the fact that she had not even had time to properly brush her hair before being hauled to this ceremony. When she reached the altar, she stopped. The sovereign crystal sat on a pedestal of carved obsidian, easily the size of a human head, its surface etched with symbols so old that no one living could read them anymore. It looked cold, forbidding, completely disinterested in her existence. "Place your hand upon it," Elder Morgoth repeated. Rowena reached out with a trembling hand. Her fingers looked small and pale against the crystal's surface, her nails still stained with ink from her work in the archives. She pressed her palm flat against the stone and immediately gasped. It was not cold. It was burning. Not with heat exactly, but with something else. Something that rushed up her arm like lightning in her veins, like fire in her blood, like 1,000 voices all, speaking at once in a language she had never learned, but somehow understood. The crystal blazed. Golden light exploded from its core, so bright that people in the galleries cried out and shielded their eyes. The light poured through the etched symbols, making them glow like molten gold, and then it began to climb. Up Rowena's arm, across her shoulders, illuminating the ancient marks that suddenly appeared on her skin. Marks that looked like they had always been there, just waiting to be revealed. She tried to pull her hand away, but she could not move. The voices were louder now, no longer whispers but declarations, pronouncements, prophecies spoken in that ancient tongue that she should not understand but did. They spoke of bloodlines and broken chains, of queens who had been erased from history and power that had been sleeping for generations. They spoke of her. "What is happening?" Cassian's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with alarm. He had moved closer without realizing it, his alpha instincts reacting to a threat he could not identify. "What is she doing to the crystal?" "She is doing nothing," Elder Morgoth breathed, and there was awe in his voice now, the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious experiences. "The crystal is doing everything. Look at the marks, Your Majesty. Look at what the ancestors reveal." The golden light had begun to fade. Slowly, like dawn receding back into night. And as it did, Rowena felt her strength returning. Her hand slipped from the crystal, and she staggered backward, gasping for air. But the marks remained. They covered her arms in intricate patterns, ancient script and symbols that glowed faintly, even without the crystal's light. They were beautiful and terrifying and completely impossible. Cassian stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. His amber eyes had gone wide, his expression shifting from anger to shock to something that might have been recognition. "Those marks," he said slowly. "Those are royal marks, sovereign marks. They only appear on those of direct royal bloodline." Elder Morgoth nodded, moving around Rowena in a slow circle, examining the glowing script with hands that shook slightly. "Not just any royal bloodline," he murmured. "These are old. Older than Blackthorn. Older than the Northern Territories as we know them." He stopped in front of her, meeting her terrified gaze with eyes that suddenly looked far too knowing. "Child, what do you know of your family? Your parents? Your grandparents?" Rowena's mouth was dry. "Nothing," she managed. "I was found. As an infant. In the woods near the eastern border. The pack took me in, raised me in the orphanage. I never knew who my parents were. No one did." "They knew," another voice said, and every head turned toward the shadows at the back of the hall. An ancient woman stepped into the torchlight, so old that her face was a map of wrinkles, her hair white as fresh snow. Rowena had never seen her before, but something about her presence made every wolf in the room go still and silent. Even Cassian seemed momentarily uncertain. "Mother Thessaly," Elder Morgoth breathed. "We thought you had passed beyond the veil." "Not yet," the old woman said with a dry chuckle, "though I have been close enough to see what lies there, which is how I knew this day would come. I have been waiting, watching, ensuring the girl survived long enough to reach this moment." She moved toward Rowena with surprising grace for someone so ancient, her eyes sharp and clear despite her age. "They knew who you were, child. The ones who found you. They knew from the moment they saw the mark on your shoulder blade, the one you have borne since birth and hidden all your life." Rowena's hand went instinctively to her left shoulder, to the spot where a strange birthmark had always sat, a circular symbol she had never understood and always covered. "How do you know about that?" she whispered. "Because I am the one who marked you," Mother Thessaly said simply. "The night you were born. The night your mother died protecting you from those who would have seen you dead, rather than let the old bloodline return. I was her midwife, her friend. And when she pressed you into my arms with her last breath, she made me swear an oath. Hide the child, keep her safe, wait for the day when the ancestors would call her home." The hall erupted. Voices overlapped in confusion and shock, pack members demanding explanations, counsel, members shouting about impossibilities and frauds. But Cassian raised one hand, and the room fell silent immediately. 200 wolves obeying the instinctive command of their alpha. His eyes had not left Rowena's face. "Explain," he said to Mother Thessaly, his voice dangerously quiet. "Explain how a scribe from my own household carries royal marks older than my family line. Explain how this is possible when the ancient bloodlines were extinguished centuries ago." "Not extinguished, Mother," Thessaly corrected gently. "Hidden. Suppressed. Erased from the histories because they were inconvenient to those who took power in their absence." She moved to stand beside Rowena, placing a weathered hand on the girl's shoulder. "This child is the last living descendant of the Thornwood line, the first royal house, the ones who ruled these lands before the Blackthorns, before the Ashfords, before any of the families we now consider noble. Her great-great-great-grandmother was Queen Morgana Thornwood, who was betrayed and murdered by her own council, her children hunted and killed. Her line seemingly ended. Mother Thessaly's grip tightened slightly. But one child survived, a daughter who was smuggled away and raised in secret, who married in secret, who had children in secret. Generation after generation, hiding in plain sight, the power dormant, waiting. Until this one. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Rowena felt like she was drowning. Royal bloodline, ancient queens, murdered ancestors. It was too much, too impossible, too overwhelming. She was nobody. She had always been nobody. She cataloged books and tried to stay invisible, and had never wanted anything more than a quiet life where no one noticed her. "This is madness," Lady Vivian said, her voice cutting through Rowena's spiraling thoughts. She had recovered her composure, her face now a mask of elegant disdain. "You expect us to believe that a common scribe with no training, no education, no evidence of any royal bearing whatsoever is actually the heir to some mythical ancient bloodline? Based on what? Glowing marks that could be achieved with any number of enchantments? A convenient story from a woman who appears from nowhere?" She turned to Cassian, her eyes pleading. "Your Majesty, surely you see this for what it is. A manipulation. An attempt to disrupt the ceremony and undermine your choice of Luna." Cassian's expression was unreadable. He looked at Vivian, then at Mother Thessaly, then at Rowena. When his eyes met hers, she saw the calculation happening behind them, the political mind weighing options and consequences. "The crystal does not lie," Elder Morgoth said quietly. It responded to her, not to Lady Ashford. "The ancestors have spoken." "The ancestors can be mistaken," Vivian shot back, "or their message misinterpreted. The crystal glowed, yes, but that does not necessarily indicate approval for a Luna Queen match. It could mean many things." "It means exactly what we all know it means," Mother Thessaly said, her voice suddenly hard as iron. "The girl carries the blood of the first kings. The crystal recognized it. The ancestors recognized it. Whether you like it or not, whether it fits your political plans or not, the truth stands before you." She turned to Cassian, her ancient eyes boring into his. "You are Alpha King by right of conquest and strength, Cassian Blackthorn. Your line took these territories through war and held them through power. There is no shame in that. But the Thornwood line ruled by right of magic and covenant with the land itself. They were chosen by forces older than any of us understand, and that power does not simply disappear because it is convenient. It sleeps, it waits, and when it wakes, you cannot ignore it." Cassian's hands were still clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mother Thessaly? That I set aside my choice of Luna because of ancient history and mystical claims? That I bind myself to a woman I do not know, who has no training for the role, who cannot even meet my eyes without trembling, simply because some old magic says she has royal blood?" The words stung, but they were true. Rowena could not deny any of it. She was trembling right now, her whole body shaking with the aftershocks of whatever had happened when she touched that crystal. She had no idea how to be a Luna Queen. She could barely manage to be a functioning member of Pack Society. The thought of standing beside this powerful, controlled, terrifying Alpha King and helping him rule an entire territory was so absurd, it would have been laughable if it were not so horrifying. "I am suggesting," Mother Thessaly said carefully, "that you consider the possibility that the ancestors know something you do not. That destiny is not always convenient or comfortable. That the right choice is not always the easy one." Cassian turned away, his shoulders rigid. He was silent for a long moment, and Rowena could feel the tension in the hall ratcheting higher with each passing second. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured and cold. "I will not make a decision tonight based on shock and spectacle. This ceremony is suspended. The council will convene tomorrow to examine the evidence and hear testimony. Until then, both candidates will remain in the palace under guard." He glanced at Rowena, his expression still unreadable. If Mother Thessaly's claims are true, if you truly carry the bloodline she describes, then there will be proof beyond glowing marks and ancient stones. We will find it. He turned and strode from the hall without another word, his personal guards falling into step behind him. The gathered pack members began to disperse slowly, their voices rising in excited whispers and heated debates. Rowena stood frozen at the altar, her legs suddenly too weak to support her weight. She would have fallen if Mother Thessaly had not steadied her with surprisingly strong hands. "Come, child," the old woman murmured. "We have much to discuss and very little time." But before they could move, Vivian appeared in front of them, her beautiful face twisted with barely suppressed fury. "I do not know what game you are playing," she hissed at Rowena, her voice low enough that only they could hear. "But you will not steal what is rightfully mine. I have prepared my entire life for this role. I am the perfect match for the Alpha King. You are nothing but a frightened little mouse who stumbled into something far beyond her understanding." Rowena found her voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. "I did not ask for any of this. I did not want to be here. If I could give you this entire nightmare, I would do it gladly." Something flickered in Vivian's eyes at that, something that might have been surprise. She studied Rowena's face as if searching for deception, and seemed almost disappointed to find only sincerity. "You actually mean that," she said slowly. "You truly do not want to be Luna Queen." "I want to go back to my room and my books and my quiet life," Rowena said, feeling tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I want to forget this ever happened." Vivian's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained hard. "Then we want the same thing," she said. "I want you gone and you want to leave. Perhaps we can help each other." She glanced at Mother Thessaly, then back to Rowena. "There are ways to suppress bloodlines, to hide marks, to convince councils that ancient magic is simply ancient mistakes. If you truly want no part of this, I can arrange it. All you have to do is stay quiet, and let me handle the testimony tomorrow." Mother Thessaly's grip on Rowena's shoulder tightened in warning, but the old woman said nothing. This was Rowena's choice to make. Rowena looked into Vivian's eyes and saw the desperation there beneath the polished surface. She understood it. Vivian had built her entire identity around becoming Luna Queen. It was not just about power or status. It was about purpose, about proving her worth, about fulfilling the destiny she had been groomed for since childhood. Rowena understood that kind of pressure. But she also understood what it felt like to be told you were nothing your entire life, and to believe it so deeply that the possibility of being something more felt like a lie. "I need to think," she said finally. "I need time to understand what is happening before I make any decisions." Vivian's jaw tightened. "Time is a luxury neither of us has. The council meets tomorrow. Whatever you are going to do, you need to decide now." "Then I will decide tomorrow," Rowena said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "When I understand what I am deciding between." Vivian stared at her for another moment, then made a sound of frustration and swept away, her silver dress trailing behind her like moonlight. Mother Thessaly chuckled softly. "Well spoken, child. Perhaps there is more spine in you than you realize." She guided Rowena toward a side entrance, away from the dispersing crowd. "Come. We have a great deal to discuss, and I suspect you have many questions." They walked through torchlit corridors that Rowena had cleaned 100 times but had never truly noticed. Everything looked different now, as if the world had shifted slightly on its axis, and nothing would ever quite align the same way again. Mother Thessaly led her to a small chamber tucked away in the oldest part of the castle, a room with stone walls and narrow windows that looked out over the moonlit forest. A fire already burned in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across shelves lined with books and scrolls. "Sit," Mother Thessaly commanded, gesturing to a worn chair near the fire. Rowena sat, grateful to take the weight off her shaking legs. The old woman moved to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of amber liquid, pouring 2 generous measures into crystal glasses. She pressed one into Rowena's hands. "Drink," she said. "It will help with the shock." Rowena took a sip and gasped as liquid fire burned down her throat. It was strong and sweet and made her eyes water. But Mother Thessaly was right. It did help. The warmth spread through her chest, loosening some of the terrible tension that had her muscles locked tight. "What happened back there?" she asked, when she could speak again. "What did I do to the crystal?" "You did nothing," Mother Thessaly said, settling into the chair opposite with her own glass. "The crystal did everything. It recognized the bloodline magic in you, the power that has been sleeping since you were born. When you touched it, that power woke up. Just a little. Just enough to make itself known." She took a sip of her drink, her eyes distant with memory. "Your mother was the same. She could walk through the pack house and flowers would bloom in her footsteps without her even noticing. The land itself responded to her presence. It is a gift of the Thornwood line, connection to the natural world, to the ancient magic that flows through this territory, like blood through veins." Rowena looked down at her arms, at the faintly glowing marks that still traced patterns across her skin. They were beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. Why did it sleep? Why did the power not show itself before? "Because I bound it," Mother Thessaly said simply. "The night you were born. Your mother made me promise to keep you hidden, and the only way to truly hide a Thornwood is to bind their power so deep that even they do not know it exists. I placed a suppression seal on you, keyed to remain in place until you either came of age or until the ancestors themselves called for you, whichever came first." "The lunar registry," Rowena breathed. "My name appearing. That was the ancestors calling?" Mother Thessaly nodded. "The registry is not maintained by any mortal hand. It is linked directly to the sovereign crystal, to the collective consciousness of every Alpha King who ever ruled. When they determined it was time for the Thornwood line to return, they ensured you would be brought to the ceremony. They gave you no choice in the matter." She leaned forward, her weathered face serious. "But what happens next, child? That choice is yours. I can reinforce the seal. I can bind your power again, help you disappear back into obscurity. Vivienne was not wrong when she suggested such things are possible. Or you can embrace what you are. Learn to wield the power that is your birthright. Stand before the council tomorrow and claim your place." Rowena's hands were shaking again. She set the glass down before she could spill it. "I do not know how to be a queen. I do not know how to be anything other than what I am. A scribe. A nobody." "You are not a nobody," Mother Thessaly said sharply. "You never were. You are the last of the Thornwood line. You carry magic in your blood that could heal this land or destroy it, depending on how it is wielded. You are exactly the opposite of a nobody." She softened her tone. "But I will not lie to you, child. The path forward will not be easy. Cassian Blackthorn is not a man who accepts disruption to his plans lightly. He has built his rule on control and strength and calculated decisions. You are none of those things. You are chaos and ancient magic and destiny he did not choose. He will fight this. He will fight you." "Then why would I choose this?" Rowena asked, her voice breaking slightly. "Why would I put myself through that? Why not just let Vivienne have what she wants and go back to my quiet life?" Mother Thessaly was silent for a long moment, studying the fire. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but unyielding. "Because your quiet life was never truly yours. It was a hiding place, a safe shadow where you could pretend you were content being invisible. But deep down, child, in the parts of yourself you are afraid to examine, you know the truth. You were meant for more than dusty archives and lonely rooms. The land calls to you. The ancestors chose you. And whether you accept it or not, the power inside you will not stay buried forever. Better to face it on your own terms than to have it tear free when you are unprepared. The words struck something deep in Rowena's chest, a truth she had been avoiding her whole life. She had told herself she was content with smallness, with invisibility, with never being noticed or expected to be anything important. But content was not the same as happy. Safe was not the same as fulfilled. And somewhere beneath all the fear and self-doubt, there was a tiny spark of something else. Curiosity, longing, the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than what she had always believed. "I am scared," she whispered. Mother Thessaly smiled, and it was warm and sad and understanding. "Of course you are. Only a fool would not be frightened of standing before the Alpha King and claiming power he did not know existed. But courage is not the absence of fear, child. It is moving forward despite it. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below." Rowena spent the night in that small chamber, unable to sleep, her mind spinning with possibilities and terrors. Mother Thessaly had given her a leather-bound journal filled with entries. Written in an old dialect, accounts from her grandmother and great-grandmother and the women before them who had carried the Thornwood blood in secret. She read by firelight, tracing her fingers over words written by hands long turned to dust, trying to understand the weight of legacy she had inherited without ever asking for it. The women in these pages had been healers and seers, protectors and peacemakers. They had used their connection to the land to prevent droughts and end plagues, to broker peace between warring packs and guide leaders toward wisdom rather than destruction. They had not ruled through conquest or military might. They had ruled through something deeper, something that could not be taken by force or intimidation. They had ruled through connection, through understanding the intricate web that linked every living thing in the territory to the land itself and to each other. But they had also suffered. The last true Thornwood queen, her great-great-great grandmother Morgana, had been betrayed by those who feared her power, who saw magic as a threat to their own ambitions. She had been murdered in her own throne room, her children hunted down one by one. Only one daughter had escaped, and she had spent her entire life running, hiding, teaching her own children to suppress everything that made them Thornwood. The legacy was not just power, it was pain, sacrifice. The knowledge that being seen, being powerful, being important, could get you killed. No wonder her ancestors had chosen to hide. No wonder they had taught their daughters to be invisible. As dawn light began to filter through the narrow windows, Rowena closed the journal and pressed her hands against her face. She had not slept. Her eyes burned and her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind was somehow clearer than it had been in years. She understood now why she had always felt like she did not quite fit in her own skin, why she had always been drawn to the archives where she could read about the old days, the old ways. She had been searching without knowing what she was looking for, searching for the parts of herself that had been deliberately hidden away. A knock at the door made her jump. Mother Thessaly, who had been dozing in the other chair, opened one eye. "That will be your escort," she said. "The council convenes within the hour." Rowena's heart began to race again, but she forced herself to stand, to smooth her rumpled dress, to take a deep breath. "Mother Thessaly," she said quietly, "if I choose to claim this, if I choose to embrace the bloodline, what happens to the seal you placed on me? What happens to the power?" The old woman smiled. "It breaks, all at once, and you will need to learn very quickly how to control what has been contained for 24 years. It will not be pleasant. It may even be dangerous, but I will help you, if that is what you choose." Rowena nodded slowly. "And if I choose to reinforce the seal instead? To hide? Again? Then you live your quiet life. You marry someone unremarkable. You have unremarkable children. You grow old in your archives. And when you die, the Thornwood line dies with you. The magic returns to the earth. The cycle ends. Mother Thessaly stood, moving to stand before Rowena, placing both weathered hands on the younger woman's shoulders. Neither choice is wrong, child, but only one is true to who you are. The escort turned out to be two stern-faced guards, who led Rowena through the castle to the council chambers. She could feel pack members watching from doorways and corridors, could hear the whispers following in her wake. Word had spread quickly. The entire territory probably knew by now about the scribe who had made the sovereign crystal blaze, who carried marks of an ancient bloodline, who had somehow disrupted the Alpha King's carefully planned ceremony. The council chamber was a circular room with a high domed ceiling, ringed by tiered seats where council members and witnesses could observe the proceedings. At the center was a raised platform where those being questioned would stand. Rowena's stomach churned as she was led to that platform. The seats were already filling with people. She recognized members of the Territorial Council, leaders from various packs, elders whose combined age probably exceeded a millennium. And there, in the highest seat, was Cassian Blackthorn. He wore formal robes today, deep midnight blue embroidered with silver wolves, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the sharp planes of his face. He looked every inch the Alpha King, powerful and remote and completely in control. His amber eyes tracked Rowena as she climbed onto the platform, his expression unreadable. Vivian sat 3 seats to his left, dressed in pale gold that made her look like she was carved from sunlight. She watched Rowena with cool calculation, probably trying to determine which choice the scribe had made during the long night. Elder Morgoth stood and the room fell silent. "We gathered to examine the events of last evening's ceremony," he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber, "to determine the validity of the claims made regarding Rowena Thorne's bloodline and her potential eligibility as Luna Queen candidate." He turned to Mother Thessaly, who had appeared from somewhere in the back rows to stand near the platform. "Mother Thessaly, you made certain assertions last night, that Rowena Thorne is the last living descendant of the Thornwood royal line, that her mother was murdered protecting her, that you yourself placed a binding seal on the child to hide her power. Do you stand by these claims?" "I do," Mother Thessaly said firmly, "and I can provide proof." She held up the leather journal Rowena had been reading, along with several other documents that looked equally ancient. "These are the personal records of the Thornwood women, passed down through generations. They detail marriages, births, deaths, and the careful tracking of the bloodline. I can trace Rowena's lineage directly back to Queen Morgana Thornwood through documented evidence." A council member Rowena did not recognize stood up. "Documents can be forged, especially old ones where there is no one left alive to contradict them. How do we know these are genuine?" "The script itself is verification," Elder Morgoth said, moving to examine the journals Mother Thessaly had produced. He ran gnarled fingers over the pages, his expression growing more serious. "This is written in Old Lycan, a dialect that has not been commonly used in over 300 years. Not only that, but it is written in the formal court style, with specific grammatical structures and ceremonial phrases that very few scholars today could reproduce accurately. To forge these documents would require expertise that perhaps a handful of people in the entire territory possess, and all of them are in this room." He looked up at Mother Thessaly. "I believe these are genuine." A murmur ran through the assembled crowd. Cassian leaned forward slightly in his seat. "Even if the documents are real," he said, his voice cutting through the whispers, "they only prove that Rowena's ancestors were Thornwood. They do not prove that she herself carries the bloodline magic, the power that would make her claim legitimate. Any number of generations of dilution could have rendered the line dormant or extinct in all but name. That is what the sovereign crystal proved," Mother Thessaly countered. "The ancestors themselves recognized her power. The marks appeared, the light blazed. You saw it with your own eyes, Your Majesty. Are you suggesting the crystal was mistaken? I am suggesting, Cassian said carefully, that we do not fully understand how the crystal works or what triggers its responses. For all we know, it could have been reacting to the binding seal rather than to any inherent royal power. Magical artifacts can be unpredictable when faced with unfamiliar magic. He stood, and the room seemed to shrink slightly around him. I propose a different test, one that cannot be misinterpreted. If Rowena Thorne truly carries active Thornwood bloodline magic, then she should be able to demonstrate it in a controlled setting, not through touching an artifact, but through actual application of power. He turned those amber eyes directly on Rowena. The historical records say that Thornwood queens could communicate with the land itself, that they could sense the health of the territory, influence growing things, even calm or excite animal populations. Surely, if such power exists in you, you should be able to show us some evidence of it. Rowena's mouth went dry. She could feel every eye in the chamber on her, could sense the trap closing around her. If she claimed she could not demonstrate the power, Cassian would use it as proof that the whole thing was a fabrication or a misunderstanding. If she tried and failed, same result. But if she tried and succeeded, if she broke the seal and let the magic free, there would be no going back. No more hiding, no more quiet life in the archives. She started, her voice barely audible. She cleared her throat and tried again. I have never consciously used any magic. If it exists in me, I do not know how to access it. How convenient, Vivian murmured from her seat, just loud enough to be heard. Cassian's eyes narrowed slightly. Then perhaps Mother Thessaly can help you access it. Since she is the one who claims to have bound it in the first place, surely she can provide temporary release for the purposes of this demonstration. It was a reasonable request, too reasonable to refuse without looking like she was trying to avoid scrutiny. Rowena looked at Mother Thessaly, who nodded slowly. It can be done, the old woman said. Though I must warn the council that releasing power that has been suppressed for 24 years will not be a gentle process. The magic will want to surge free all at once. Rowena will need time to learn control. We do not need grand displays, Cassian said. Something simple will suffice. Make a flower bloom. Sense the nearest water source. Anything that demonstrates genuine connection to the land, rather than mere heredity. Rowena felt her legs beginning to shake again. This was it. The moment of choice. She could refuse. She could tell them she wanted no part of this. Ask Mother Thessaly to reinforce the seal. Disappear back into her small, safe life. Vivian would get what she wanted. Cassian would get what he wanted. Everyone would be satisfied except possibly some long-dead ancestors whose opinions should not matter more than her own peace of mind. But then she thought about the journal she had read through the night, about the women who had sacrificed everything to keep this bloodline alive, even in secret. They had endured pain and loss and fear, all to preserve something they believed was important, something they believed the world needed. Was she really going to let it all end because she was too afraid to try? She looked up at Cassian, meeting those amber eyes directly for the first time. If I do this, she said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. If I prove the power is real, what happens then? Something flickered in his expression, too quick to identify. Then the council will have to seriously consider your claim. It will not automatically make you Luna Queen. There are many factors to consider, but it will mean we cannot dismiss you out of hand. In other words, Rowena said slowly, I could prove everything you are asking me to prove, and you could still choose Lady Vivian anyway. Cassian's jaw tightened. I am Alpha King. The final decision regarding my Luna Queen is mine to make. The council advises. The ancestors may signal their preferences, but I am not bound by either. His eyes held hers. So yes, you could prove your bloodline and your power And I could still choose another path. That is the reality you face. At least he was honest. Rowena appreciated that, even as it made her situation more painfully clear. She was not being offered a crown. She was being asked to expose herself, to break open everything she had hidden, for the mere possibility of being considered. It was not fair. But then, when had anything about her life been fair? Very well, she said quietly. She turned to Mother Thessaly. Release the seal. Mother Thessaly's eyes widened slightly. You are certain, child? Once done, it cannot be easily undone. I am certain, Rowena said, though her voice trembled. I am tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. If this power is real, if it is truly part of me, then I want to know. I want to see what I am. The old woman studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. She stepped up onto the platform and placed both hands on Rowena's shoulders, just as she had done the night before. This will hurt, she said softly. Forgive me. She began to speak in that ancient tongue, the same language Rowena had heard from the crystal. And as the words poured out, Rowena felt something deep inside her chest begin to crack. It was not a physical sensation exactly, but it was close. Like ice breaking on a frozen river. Like roots bursting through stone. Like something that had been compressed and bound and locked away for so long that it had nearly forgotten what freedom felt like, suddenly remembering all at once. The seal shattered. Power exploded through Rowena's body like lightning in her veins. She gasped and would have fallen if Mother Thessaly had not been holding her. Every nerve ending was on fire, every sense suddenly amplified to an almost unbearable degree. She could hear heartbeats, dozens of them, the collected pulse of every person in the chamber. She could smell the morning dew still clinging to the stones outside, could taste the lingering smoke from the council room's torch fires, could feel the vibration of growing things in the earth beneath her feet. And deeper than all of that, she could feel the land. The territory itself seemed to wake up around her, aware of her presence in a way it had never been before. It knew her, recognized her, welcomed her like a lost child finally come home. The marks on her arms blazed so bright they lit up the entire chamber, golden light pouring from the ancient symbols. But it was not just her arms now. The marks were spreading, flowing across her. Skin like living things, beautiful and terrifying, and completely beyond her control. Flowers began to bloom in the cracks between the floor stones. Vines pushed up through the mortar, unfurling leaves that should not exist in winter. The air filled with the scent of spring growth and wild honey. Every plant in the chamber, including the decorative winter branches in the ceremonial urns, suddenly burst into vibrant green life, producing flowers and fruit in a riot of color that belonged to no season. Rowena could not stop it. She did not know how to stop it. The power kept pouring out of her, responding to emotions she barely understood, making the chamber into a wild garden that grew more chaotic with every passing second. Enough. Cassian's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with command. Rowena, you need to control it. Pull it back. But she did not know how. The power was too big, too overwhelming, too much after being contained for so long. It wanted out. It wanted to touch everything, to connect with every living thing, to remake the world into something green and growing and alive. She felt hands on her face, warm and rough. Her eyes flew open, and she found herself staring directly into Cassian's amber gaze. He had crossed the chamber in seconds, had stepped onto the platform despite the vines now crawling up its sides, and had taken her face between his hands. Focus on me, he commanded, his voice brooking no argument. Nothing else. Just my voice. Just my eyes. Pull the power back. Draw it in. You are the one in control here, not it. His presence was overwhelming in a different way than the magic. He was solid and real and undeniably there, an anchor point in the storm of sensation that was threatening to drown her. Rowena grabbed onto that anchor with everything she had. She focused on his eyes, on the flecks of gold in the amber, on the surprising warmth of his hands against her skin. She imagined the power as a flood, and herself as a dam. Tried to visualize pulling it back, containing it, making it smaller and quieter and manageable. Slowly, painfully, the wild growth began to stop. The vines ceased their spreading. The flowers stopped blooming. The light from her marks dimmed until it was just a soft glow rather than a blinding glare. Rowena was shaking violently, soaked with sweat, gasping for air, but the power was contained. Mostly. Cassian did not let go of her face immediately. He studied her for a moment longer, his expression unreadable, then stepped back and released her. She nearly collapsed without his support. But Mother Thessaly was there again, steadying her with those deceptively strong hands. The council chamber looked like something from a fairy tale. Flowers covered nearly every surface, vines draped from the ceiling, and the scent of a dozen different blooming plants filled the air. The council members sat in stunned silence, staring at the impossible garden that had erupted in their formal meeting space. "Well," Elder Morgoth said finally, his voice rough with awe, "I believe that answers the question of whether the bloodline magic is real." Vivian sat frozen in her seat, her face pale. She was staring at Rowena with an expression that mixed fear and fascination, and something that might have been grief. All her carefully laid plans, her lifetime of preparation, rendered suddenly uncertain by a scribe who had made flowers bloom through stone. Cassian turned to address the council, his voice carefully controlled. "The demonstration proves that Rowena Thorne carries active Thornwood bloodline magic. That is no longer in dispute. What remains in dispute is what this means for the succession, for the choosing of Luna Queen, and for the stability of the territory." He moved back to his seat, his movements precise and measured. "I propose that we adjourn for 3 days. Give Rowena time to learn basic control over her abilities, so she does not accidentally turn the entire castle into a forest. Give the council time to review the historical precedents and legal implications. Give all of us time to think clearly about what path forward serves the territory best." It was a reasonable proposal, and the council agreed quickly. As the session was dismissed and people began filing out, still casting awed and frightened glances at the transformed chamber, Rowena felt the last of her adrenaline draining away. She was exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced. Every muscle ached. Her head pounded. She wanted nothing more than to collapse somewhere dark and quiet, and sleep for a week. But as she turned to leave with Mother Thessaly, Cassian's voice stopped her. "Rowena." A moment. She turned back slowly. He stood alone on the platform now, surrounded by flowers that had bloomed at her touch, looking somehow even more imposing against the backdrop of impossible spring growth. "Your Majesty," she managed, her voice hoarse. He was quiet for a moment, studying her with those intense amber eyes. "You chose to break the seal," he said finally. "Why? You could have walked away, reinforced the binding, disappeared back into obscurity. But you chose the harder path. I want to know why." Rowena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the chamber. "Because I am tired of hiding," she said quietly. "Tired of being afraid of my own existence. I do not know if I can be a Luna Queen. I do not know if I can be anything other than what I have always been. But I do know that I am tired of living half a life, because it feels safer than living a whole one." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the carefully maintained control. "You understand that this complicates everything," he said, and for the first time since she had met him, he sounded tired rather than commanding. "I had a plan, a clear path forward. Vivian is perfect for this role. She understands politics and diplomacy. She can navigate the complex relationships between packs. She will strengthen my rule." "I know," Rowena said. "I am none of those things. I am the opposite of perfect for this role. But apparently the ancestors disagree. And while I am sure they are inconvenient, I am also fairly certain you cannot just ignore them without consequences." Cassian's mouth twitched, almost like he wanted to smile but had forgotten how. "No," he admitted. "I cannot ignore them. The council would never allow it. The traditionalists would see it as blasphemy. It would undermine the very foundation of legitimacy my family's rule rests on." He moved closer, and Rowena had to fight the urge to step back. He was so tall, so imposing, so overwhelmingly present. "But I also cannot bind myself to someone who cannot function in this role," he continued. "The Luna Queen is not just a ceremonial position. She has real responsibilities, real power. She must be able to make difficult decisions, to stand before hostile packs and negotiate without flinching, to project strength even when she is terrified." His eyes held hers. "Right now, you cannot even meet my gaze without shaking. How do you propose to stand beside me and help rule an entire territory?" The question was brutal in its honesty, but also fair. Rowena forced herself to lift her chin, to hold his gaze even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. "I do not know," she said, "but I am willing to learn. If you give me these 3 days, I will work with Mother Thessaly to gain control over the magic. I will study everything I can about what a Luna Queen is supposed to do, and at the end of 3 days, you can evaluate whether I am even remotely capable of this role." She took a shaky breath. "And if I am not, if I truly cannot handle it, then I will step aside myself. You will not have to reject me publicly. I will withdraw my claim, and you can choose Vivian with a clear conscience. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on." Cassian studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he extended one hand. 3 days, he said. "Prove to me that you are more than a frightened scribe with powerful bloodline. Prove that you can be what this territory needs, and I will give your claim the serious consideration it deserves." Rowena looked at his outstretched hand. It was large and scarred, the hand of a warrior who had fought for everything he had. Taking it felt like accepting a challenge she was not sure she could meet, but she had already chosen to stop hiding. She had already broken the seal and let the magic free. What was one more impossible task? She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and firm, and the moment their skin touched, she felt something arc between them like static electricity. His eyes widened slightly, and she knew he had felt it too. The mate bond. Faint, but undeniable. The very thing the ancestors had been trying to tell them all along. Cassian dropped her hand quickly, his expression shuddering closed again. 3 days, he repeated, his voice carefully neutral. Then he turned and strode from the chamber, leaving Rowena standing alone among the flowers she had created, her hand still tingling from his touch. Mother Thessaly approached from the shadows, a knowing smile on her weathered face. "Well," she said, "this should be interesting." The next 3 days passed in a blur of exhaustion and intense learning. Mother Thessaly proved to be a demanding teacher, pushing Rowena to her limits and then past them. They worked from dawn until well past midnight, practicing control over the magic that now flowed freely through Rowena's veins. It was not like using a tool or learning a skill. It was more like learning to breathe in a new way, to sense things that had always been there, but that she had never been able to perceive before. The land spoke to her constantly now. She could feel the health of every plant in the castle gardens, could sense water sources through solid stone, could detect the presence of other living creatures like spots of warmth in her awareness. It was overwhelming and beautiful, and occasionally terrifying when she lost focus and the power tried to surge free again. But gradually, painfully, She learned to contain it, to direct it with intention rather than letting it respond to every passing emotion, to pull it back when it wanted to spread. Mother Thessaly also drilled her on history and protocol, forcing her to memorize the names and relationships of every major pack leader, every territorial dispute, every alliance and grudge that shaped the current political landscape. Rowena had always been good at memorization from her work in the archives, but this was different. This was not abstract information. These were people and situations she might actually have to navigate if she became Luna Queen. On the second evening, as they sat reviewing trade agreements by candlelight, Rowena looked up at the old woman. "You have been preparing for this my whole life, have you not?" she asked. "You knew this day would come." Mother Thessaly smiled sadly. "I hoped it would come. I was never certain. The ancestors work in their own time, by their own logic. For all I knew, you could have lived and died in obscurity, and the Thornwood line would have ended with you. But yes, I prepared. I watched you grow. I ensured you were educated, that you learned to read and write, that you were placed in the archives where you would have access to knowledge even if you never knew why it mattered." She reached over and patted Rowena's hand. "I could not force this path on you. The choice had to be yours. But I could make certain you would be ready to walk it if you chose to." "And if I fail," Rowena whispered, "if I cannot learn to control this, cannot learn to be what they need me to be, then you will have tried," Mother Thessaly said simply. "That is more than most people can say. More than your ancestors who hid were able to say. You stood up. You claimed your name. You let the magic free. Whatever happens now, you did not run from who you are." On the third morning, Rowena woke early and walked through the castle gardens alone. It was just before dawn, the sky that deep blue that comes before sunrise. She had not slept well, her mind spinning with everything she had learned, everything that would be decided today. The garden recognized her now. She could feel it the moment she stepped onto the paths, the way the plants seemed to lean toward her, the way the earth itself felt warm beneath her feet. She walked until she reached a small fountain at the center of the formal rose garden, now dormant for winter. She sat on the fountain's edge and placed her hands flat on the cold stone, closing her eyes and reaching out with the new senses she was still learning to trust. She could feel the roses sleeping in their beds, their roots deep and strong, waiting for spring. She could sense the fountain's water source, an underground spring that fed the entire castle's water system. She could detect small animals bedded down in the hedges, birds beginning to wake in the nearby trees. And deeper still, beneath all of that, she could feel the land itself, the territory that had once belonged to her ancestors. It was vast and complex, a living thing made of countless smaller lives all interconnected. She could sense areas that were healthy and thriving, and areas that were struggling, wounded by old conflicts or poor management or simple neglect. This was what Thornwood Queens had done. They had maintained this connection, had used it to keep the territory balanced and whole. It was not about ruling through force or fear. It was about understanding the intricate web of life and making sure no part of it was ignored or forgotten. She could do this. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not as well as her ancestors had, but she could learn. She could try. "You are up early." She opened her eyes to find Cassian standing a few feet away, watching her. He was dressed more casually than she had seen him before, in simple dark clothes without the formal robes or regalia. He looked younger somehow, more human, and less like an untouchable alpha king. "I could not sleep," she admitted. "Too much to think about. Too much to fear." He moved closer and sat on the fountain's edge beside her, keeping a careful distance between them. "Mother, Thessaly tells me you have made remarkable progress, that you can control the magic now without it overwhelming you." "Most of the time," Rowena said. It still surges when I am emotional or frightened, but I am learning to pull it back faster. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sky begin to lighten. Cassian spoke first. I need to tell you something. About why I chose Vivian. About why this is so difficult. Rowena waited, not trusting herself to speak. My father was a terrible king, Cassian said quietly. He ruled through fear and brutality. He made decisions based on pride and anger rather than wisdom. By the time he died, half the territory was ready to revolt, and the other half was too terrified to try. I inherited a kingdom on the verge of collapse. His hands were clasped tightly together, knuckles white. I spent the first 5 years of my reign just trying to hold things together. Rebuilding trust, proving I was not my father, making careful, strategic decisions that would strengthen rather than destroy. It worked. The territory is stable now, prosperous, but it is a fragile stability, built on calculated choices and careful control. He turned to look at her. Vivian represents everything I have been trying to build. Order, predictability, strategic alliance. Choosing her makes sense to everyone. It reinforces the current power structure. It is safe. And I am not safe, Rowena said softly. I am chaos and ancient magic and unpredictability. I am everything you have been trying to avoid. Yes, Cassian admitted. You are a risk I did not plan for and do not know how to manage, and that terrifies me in ways I am not used to being terrified. He stood, pacing a few steps away, his shoulders tense. But I also cannot deny what I felt when we touched. The mate bond is real. The ancestors clearly have opinions about this. And I watched you transform a council chamber into a garden with power that could potentially reshape the entire territory if wielded correctly. Those are not things I can simply ignore, because they are inconvenient. He turned back to face her. So I am caught between what I know is safe and what might be right. Between the path I planned and the destiny being thrust upon me, and I do not know which to choose. Rowena stood as well, her legs steadier than they had been 3 days ago. Then perhaps, she said carefully, you should stop trying to choose and start asking what the territory needs, not what makes you comfortable, not what fits your plans, but what will actually serve the people you are responsible for. Cassian's eyebrows rose slightly, surprise flickering across his face. That sounds remarkably like something a Luna Queen would say. Mother Thessaly has been drilling politics and philosophy into my head for 3 days straight, Rowena said. Apparently, I learn quickly when I am motivated by terror and desperation. He almost smiled at that. Almost. The council reconvenes in 2 hours, he said. They will expect a decision. I will be expected to announce my choice of Luna Queen. Are you ready for that? Ready to stand before them and accept whatever I decide? Rowena thought about the journal she had read, about the women who had sacrificed everything to keep the bloodline alive. She thought about Mother Thessaly, who had waited decades for this moment. She thought about the land beneath her feet that knew her name and welcomed her. Presence. I am ready, she said. Whatever you decide, I am ready to accept it. Cassian studied her for a long moment, his amber eyes unreadable. Then he nodded once and walked away, leaving her alone in the garden as the sun finally crested the horizon and filled the sky with gold. The council chamber had been cleaned of the wild growth Rowena had created, though some vines still clung stubbornly to the high corners where they were difficult to reach. The space was packed even fuller than it had been 3 days ago, word having spread throughout the territory that the Alpha King would make his decision today. Rowena stood on the platform again, but this time she was not alone. Vivian stood beside her, equally straight-backed, equally composed. They had not spoken since the first ceremony, had carefully avoided each other during the 3-day interval. But now, standing side by side, Rowena could feel the tension radiating from the other woman. "You learned control," Vivian said. Quietly, her eyes fixed straight ahead. "I watched you walk through the castle this morning. No flowers sprouting in your footsteps. No wild magic leaking out. Mother Thessaly taught you well." "She is a good teacher," Rowena replied. "Demanding, but good." Vivian was silent for a moment. Then, so softly Rowena almost missed it, she said, "I hope you understand what you are taking from me. This was supposed to be mine. Everything I am, everything I have worked for, it all pointed toward this moment. And you are going to take it with magic you did not even know you had 3 days ago." Rowena turned to look at her, seeing the pain beneath the polished surface. "I am not trying to take anything from you," she said gently. "I did not ask for this. I did not want it. But I also cannot pretend it is not real, just because it makes things easier for everyone else." Vivian met her eyes, and there was something raw and almost broken in her expression. "I know," she whispered. "That is what makes this so much worse. I could hate you if you were scheming for this, if you wanted it. But you are just as trapped as I am, are you not? Caught up in destiny and ancient magic and choices we did not make." Before Rowena could respond, the chamber doors opened and Cassian entered, flanked by Elder Morgoth and the highest-ranking council members. The crowd fell silent immediately, every eye tracking the Alpha King as he made his way to his seat. He looked exhausted, Rowena realized, like he had not slept any better than she had, like the weight of this decision had been crushing him from all sides. Elder Morgoth stood, his voice ringing out clear and formal. "We gather to witness the Alpha King's choice of Luna Queen. 2 candidates stand before us. Lady Vivian Ashford, daughter of the Northern Council, trained from birth in the arts of leadership and diplomacy. And Rowena Thorne, last of the Thornwood bloodline, bearer of ancient magic, and recognized by the Sovereign Crystal itself." He turned to Cassian. "Your Majesty, the choice is yours. Speak, and let your word become law." Cassian stood slowly. He looked first at Vivian, and Rowena saw something like regret cross his face. Then he looked at Rowena, and she saw conflict and uncertainty, and something else she could not quite identify. "This has not been an easy decision," he began. "Both women before me have value. Both have gifts that could serve the territory. In a simpler world, I could choose based on logic. And planning alone, I could select the path that fits most neatly with existing structures and call it wisdom." He paused, his jaw tightening. "But we do not live in a simple world. We live in a world where ancestors speak through crystal and ancient magic blooms in winter, and destiny does not care about our careful plans." He took a breath. "I am Alpha King because I am strong enough to hold this position. But strength is not just about force or control. It is also about recognizing when something greater than yourself is at work. When the very foundations of power are shifting beneath your feet, and holding on to the past means losing the future." His eyes locked on Rowena's. "The mate bond is real. I feel it every time we are in the same room. The ancestors chose you. The crystal recognized you. The land itself responds to your presence in ways it has not responded to any ruler in generations. These are not small things. These are not coincidences. And I will not dishonor the very traditions that legitimize my own rule by pretending I can simply ignore them because they are inconvenient." He turned to Vivian. "Lady Ashford, you are everything I thought I needed in a Luna Queen. You are brilliant and capable, and would have been an excellent partner in ruling this territory. But you are not the one the ancestors chose, and I cannot, in good conscience, set aside their clear will simply because it disrupts my plans." Vivian's face went very pale, but she held her composure. She inclined her head in a small, dignified nod. "I understand, Your Majesty." Cassian turned back to Rowena. "Rowena Thorne, you are untrained and uncertain and terrified of the role you are being asked to fill. Under normal circumstances, you would be completely unsuitable as Luna Queen. But these are not normal circumstances. You carry power that could heal this territory or destroy it. You have a connection to the land that no one else possesses, and you have shown more courage in the past 3 days than most people show in a lifetime. He descended from his seat and walked to the platform, standing directly in front of her. "I choose you," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Not because it is easy, not because it fits my plans, but because it is right. Because when the ancestors speak this clearly, when destiny makes itself this obvious, only a fool ignores it." He took her hand, and again that spark of connection arced between them. Stronger, now than before. "Will you accept this role, Rowena Thorne? Will you stand beside me as Luna Queen? Learn what you need to learn, become what you need to become, and help me rule this territory with wisdom and power?" Rowena's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to say no, to escape back to safety and invisibility. But she had already chosen to stop hiding. She had already broken the seal and claimed her name. There was no going back. "I accept," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I will do my best to be worthy of this role, to honor the ancestors who chose me, to serve the territory with everything I have." Elder Morgoth stepped forward, producing a silver circlet from within his robes. It was delicate and ancient, etched with the same symbols that glowed on Rowena's skin. "The crown of the first queens," he said reverently. "It has not been worn in over 300 years, but it recognizes its rightful bearer." He placed it on Rowena's head, and the moment the metal touched her skin, the marks on her arms blazed brilliant gold. The crown itself began to glow, resonating with the magic in her blood, and Rowena felt a rush of connection so powerful it nearly knocked her over. Every Thornwood queen who had ever worn this crown, their memories and wisdom and strength flowed through her in a wave of recognition. She was not alone in this. She carried the legacy of dozens of powerful women who had walked this path before her. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps, but Rowena barely heard them. She was looking at Cassian, at the man who had chosen destiny over comfort, who had set aside his perfect plan to accept what the ancestors had laid before him. He was still holding her hand, still watching her with those intense amber eyes. "We will figure this out together," he said quietly, meant only for her. "You will learn. I will adapt. And somehow, we will make this work. Together," Rowena repeated, testing the word. It felt foreign and frightening, and somehow exactly right. The ceremony that followed was a blur. There were oaths to be spoken and rituals to be performed. There were witnesses to acknowledge the choice and council members to confirm it. Vivienne slipped away at some point, her exit graceful and dignified, despite what Rowena knew must be devastating disappointment. When it was finally over, when the last formality had been observed and the crowd had begun to disperse, Cassian led Rowena to a private balcony overlooking the territory. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and in the fading light, Rowena could see for miles. Forests and mountains, rivers and valleys, the vast expanse of land that was now partially her responsibility. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "And terrifying," Cassian agreed. "But you do not have to face it alone anymore. That is what the mate bond means, what being Luna Queen means. We face it together." He turned to her, and for the first time since she had met him, his expression was open rather than guarded. "I am not good at this," he admitted. "At connection, at vulnerability. I have spent years building walls to protect myself and the territory. But those walls will not work anymore. Not with you. The mate bond will not allow it." Rowena surprised herself by reaching up and touching his face, her fingers gentle against the sharp line of his jaw. "Then we will learn together," she said. "How to be vulnerable, how to trust, how to rule with wisdom instead of just control. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, there was heat there that made her breath catch. "The mate bond grows stronger every moment we are together," he said softly. "Eventually it will demand to be completed. The claiming ceremony, the full bonding. Are you prepared for that?" Rowena's cheeks flushed, but she did not look away. "I am prepared to try," she said. "To learn, to become what I need to become. For the territory, for the ancestors." She paused, then added more quietly, "For you." Cassian's control finally cracked. He pulled her against him and kissed her, and it was nothing like she had imagined a kiss would be. It was fire and lightning, and the feeling of roots sinking deep into earth. The mate bond sang between them, recognizing its completion, and Rowena felt the magic in her blood respond, twining around them both in invisible threads of connection. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Rowena realized that flowers had bloomed all along the balcony railing. Roses in impossible shades of gold and crimson, spring blossoms in the middle of winter, her magic responding to the surge of emotion without her conscious direction. Cassian looked at the flowers and laughed. The sound startled out of him. "I suppose I will have to get used to that," he said. "To living with someone whose emotions literally reshape the environment." "I am working on the control," Rowena said sheepishly. "It is just harder when I am overwhelmed." "I will try to overwhelm you less," he said with a slight smile. Then his expression grew more serious. "But there is something you should know. Something I have been holding back because I was not sure if I would choose you." He led her to the balcony's edge, pointing toward the eastern mountains. "There is a reason the ancestors chose now to bring you forward. The territory is stable, yes, but there are threats gathering beyond our borders. Old enemies who remember the Thornwood Queens and fear what they represented. They will see your return as a challenge." Rowena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "What kind of threats?" "The kind that will test everything you have learned and everything you have yet to learn," Cassian said grimly. "The kind that will require both of us working together, mate bond or not, if we want to survive them." He turned to face her fully. "I am not just choosing you because the ancestors demanded it, Rowena. I am choosing you because I believe we will need the kind of power you carry to face what is coming. The Thornwood magic is not just about making flowers bloom. It is about protecting the land itself, and we are going to need that protection." Rowena looked out at the darkening territory, at the vast responsibility she had accepted, at the threats gathering in shadows she could not yet see. 3 days ago, she had been a scribe who wanted nothing more than to hide in her archives and be forgotten. Now she was Luna Queen, mate to an Alpha King, bearer of ancient magic, and apparently the key to defending the territory against enemies she did not even understand yet. It should have been impossible. It should have broken her. But as she stood there with Cassian's hand in hers, and the mate bond thrumming between them, and the land itself recognizing her presence, Rowena felt something she had never experienced before. Not fear, though there was plenty of that. Not doubt, though that was present too. But beneath all of it, fundamental and unshakable, was a sense of purpose, of rightness, of finally, after 24 years of hiding, standing exactly where she was meant to be. "Then we will face them," she said, her voice steady. "Together. With whatever strength we have and whatever strength we can find. Because that is what Luna Queens do. That is what mates do. They protect what matters, even when they are terrified." Cassian looked at her with something that might have been awe. "You really have changed in 3 days," he murmured. "No," Rowena corrected gently. "I have just stopped pretending to be smaller than I am. The strength was always there. I was just too afraid to claim it." She turned to face him fully, the crown still glowing faintly on her head, the mark still shimmering on her arms. I do not know how to be a perfect Luna Queen. I will make mistakes. I will need help and guidance, and probably a lot of patience from you and the council. But I promise you this. I will not hide anymore. I will not run from what I am or what I am capable of. And I will stand beside you and fight for this territory with everything the ancestors gave me. Cassian pulled her close again, his arms strong and warm around her. That is all I can ask, he said against her hair. That is all anyone can ask. They stood together as darkness fell and the stars began to emerge, two souls bound by destiny and choice, by ancient magic and new love, by the weight of the past and the promise of the future. Below them, the territory stretched vast and beautiful and full of unknown dangers. But for the first time in her life, Rowena was not afraid of the unknown. She was ready to face it. The claiming ceremony took place a week later, under the full moon, with the entire pack gathered to witness the formal completion of the mate bond. Rowena wore robes of deep green, embroidered with gold, the crown of the first queens on her head, and she did not tremble as she stood before Cassian and spoke the ancient oaths that would bind them together forever. When Cassian bit down on her neck, marking her as his mate, his Luna Queen, the magic in her blood responded with a surge so powerful that every plant in the ceremonial grounds burst into bloom simultaneously. The assembled pack gasped as winter suddenly became spring, as impossible flowers filled the air with perfume, as the very earth seemed to celebrate the union. And when Rowena bit Cassian in return, marking him as hers, she felt the mate bond snap into place like a key turning in a lock. Complete. Unbreakable. Perfect. She could feel his emotions now as clearly as her own. His strength and his fear. His determination and his doubt. His growing love for her that he had been too controlled to voice, but that sang through the bond like music. They were one now in a way that transcended physical union. Two souls woven together by forces older than memory, stronger than death. The feast that followed lasted until dawn, pack members celebrating the new Luna Queen and the unexpected but undeniable rightness of the match. Mother Thessaly sat in a place of honor, her ancient eyes bright with tears, as she watched Rowena move through the crowd with growing confidence, accepting congratulations and beginning the long process of building relationships with the pack leaders she would need to work with. Vivian was there too, her presence a gesture of grace that Rowena deeply appreciated. They spoke briefly, awkwardly, two women whose paths had collided in ways neither had wanted or expected. I still think I would have been good at it, Vivian said quietly. At being Luna Queen. You would have been, Rowena agreed. Better than me in many ways. More prepared, more polished. I am sorry that destiny had different plans. Vivian studied her for a moment, then something softened in her expression. Perhaps it is for the best. I wanted the position, but you want to serve. Those are not the same thing. She raised her glass in a small toast. To unexpected paths and the courage to walk them. Rowena touched her glass to Vivian's. To unexpected paths, she echoed. As the night wore on and the celebration continued, Cassian pulled Rowena away from the crowds, leading her through the castle to the royal chambers that were now theirs. He closed the door behind them, and suddenly they were alone for the first time since the ceremony, the mate bond thrumming between them with new intensity. I have something for you, he said, moving to a desk and retrieving a leather-bound book. He handed it to her, and Rowena recognized it immediately. A journal, blank pages waiting to be filled. For your own records, Cassian explained. Your mother and grandmother and all the Thornwood women before you kept journals, documented their lives and their magic. I thought you might want to continue the tradition. Start your own chapter in the bloodline's history. Rowena clutched the book to her chest, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will fill it with everything I learn, everything I become, so that if there is ever another Thornwood daughter who needs to know she is not alone, she will have this." Cassian drew her into his arms, his touch gentle despite his strength. "You are remarkable," he murmured. "A week ago you were terrified of your own shadow. Now you are planning for future generations and accepting a role that would break most people." "I am still terrified," Rowena admitted. "But I am learning that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward, despite it." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I am also learning that I do not have to face anything alone anymore. That having a mate means sharing burdens as well as joys. That is new for me. Allowing someone else to see my weaknesses and vulnerabilities, trusting that they will not use them against me." "I will never use them against you," Cassian promised. "The mate bond does not work that way. Your pain is my pain now. Your joy is my joy. We are connected in ways that make betrayal literally impossible." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch achingly tender. "I know I am not easy to be with. I know I am controlling and distant, and have spent years building walls that will be hard to dismantle. But I am trying. For you. For us." Rowena reached up and kissed him, pouring everything she felt but could not yet articulate into the contact. Love and gratitude and hope, and the bone-deep knowledge that this was right, that they were right together, despite every logical reason they should not work. When they finally came together that night, fully consummating the mate bond, the magic responded with a brilliance that lit up the entire castle. Flowers bloomed in every corner. Vines crept through windows. The air filled with the scent of spring and growing things. And throughout the territory, wolves lifted their heads and howled in recognition of something fundamental shifting in the fabric of their world. The Luna Queen had claimed her power. The ancient bloodline had returned, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? Months passed, and Rowena grew into her role with a dedication that surprised even her harshest critics. She spent hours each day learning from Mother Thessaly, mastering control over the magic that now flowed freely through her veins. She studied with Elder Morgoth, absorbing centuries of political history and pack law. She trained with Cassian, learning to project confidence and authority even when she felt uncertain. And slowly, carefully, she began to use her connection to the land to help the territory in ways no one had anticipated. She identified areas where water sources were failing and helped redirect underground springs. She sensed illness in the forests before it could spread and worked with healers to contain it. She mediated disputes between packs by helping them understand how their conflicts affected the land they all depended on. She was not a perfect Luna Queen. She still made mistakes. She still occasionally lost control of her magic when her emotions ran high. She still froze. Sometimes when faced with hostile pack leaders or political situations that were beyond her current understanding. But she learned. She grew. She became. And Cassian stood beside her through all of it. His initial skepticism transforming into genuine partnership, his carefully maintained control, slowly giving way to real vulnerability and connection. Their mate bond deepened with every passing day, until they could communicate with barely a word, could sense each other's emotions across distances, could draw strength from each other in moments of weakness. The threats Cassian had warned about did eventually come. Old enemies who remembered the Thornwood Queens and feared their return attempted to destabilize the territory through sabotage and political maneuvering. There were battles, both physical and political, that tested everything Rowena had learned. But she faced them with Cassian at her side and the full power of the Thornwood bloodline at her command. She proved that Ancient magic was not just about making flowers bloom. It was about protecting what mattered, healing what was broken, and standing firm when the darkness came. A year after her unexpected rise to Luna Queen, Rowena stood once again in the ceremonial hall where it had all begun. The hall was transformed now, deliberately maintained as a garden in honor of what had happened there. Flowers grew year-round in the cracks between stones, vines draped gracefully from the ceiling, and the whole space had become a living symbol of the new era they were building. She was there to witness another ceremony, another young wolf being called forward for a different kind of choosing. As she watched the nervous candidate approach the altar, Rowena found herself remembering the terrified scribe who had stood in this same spot, certain she did not belong, convinced she was nobody. That girl was still part of her. The fear and uncertainty and deep-rooted sense of unworthiness did not simply disappear. Because you put on a crown and spoke some oaths, but she had learned to carry those parts of herself alongside the strength and power and purpose she had discovered. She had learned that you could be afraid and brave at the same time, uncertain and determined, broken and whole. Cassian appeared at her side, taking her hand in his with easy familiarity. The mate bond hummed contentedly between them, a constant presence that had become as natural as breathing. Reminiscing? He asked softly. Remembering, she corrected. There is a difference. She looked up at him, at the man who had chosen destiny over comfort, who had learned to share power and vulnerability, who had become not just her mate but her partner in every sense of the word. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Choosing me instead of the safe path? Cassian's smile was warm and genuine, the kind of expression that had been rare when they first met, but that came more easily now. Every single day, he said. And when she started to pull away, hurt, he tightened his grip on her hand. I regret that I almost chose wrong, that I almost let fear and control dictate my decisions instead of trusting what the ancestors were trying to tell me. I regret every moment I wasted planning a future that would have been safe but empty. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. But choosing you? Accepting this wild, unpredictable, magical path we are walking together? I have never regretted that for a single heartbeat. Rowena felt tears prickling at her eyes, the good kind that came from overwhelming gratitude and love. We have come a long way from the terrified scribe and the controlling Alpha King, she murmured. We have, Cassian agreed, and we have even farther to go. But that is the beauty of it, is it not? The journey continues. We continue. Together. As the ceremony concluded, and the young wolf was granted their choosing, Rowena felt the land respond with approval, felt the connection that tied her to every living thing in the territory pulse with renewed strength. She was Luna Queen, mate to the Alpha King, last of the Thornwood bloodline, bearer of ancient magic, protector of the land. But more than any of those titles, more than any role or responsibility, she was Rowena, a woman who had learned to stop hiding, who had claimed her power and her purpose, who had chosen to be seen, to be known, to be real. And in the end, that was the greatest magic of all.